There we're going. We're hot and live.
Okay, it's recording. Hope this is going to be good.
We'll see.
Yeah.
You can always scrap it if you don't.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's
So,
like a personal conversation.
do you want to share a bit then about your experiences of, have you seen these golden cities in more detail? That was really my question.
Yes. And then they've come in different forms. Before a little venture into the technology there, I was getting the sense that you've kind of been a frequent night traveler in your life.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. There's a look around people that I kind of have picked up on over these years. But
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Really interesting. For as long as I can remember, I've dreamt about my friends and things that were actually happening with them when I've been dreaming, and I've dreamt about there's so many examples really. I've always dreamt at night about helping people cross over and all kinds of interesting things really. At the old house, not this house but a couple of houses previously, when I first moved in, I dreamt that a lady and a baby came to me and they needed me to help them to cross over. And this was, at night while I was asleep, and it was a very unusual dream but very profound dream. When I was a teenager living in Devon, we lived in a really old cottage. It was probably about 200 or 300 years old, maybe older, I don't know exactly. And I used to frequently dream that there was people dressed in really old-fashioned clothes coming to the back door, and there was often a little girl that would come to the back door, and so I was very aware that house, had experienced a lot of different things, and that these spirits, beings, humans in, that had moved over, however we want to explain it, were showing up. And because I was so sensitive, I was able to tune into those energies and see these things happening. And actually I had a lot of very profound experiences in that house. I did a lot of meditation, and I used to see American Indians quite frequently. They would come to me in my meditations. I didn't understand what that was about, but actually a few years ago I had some past life regression, and of course it turns out that I'd had a life as an American Indian, and it all made so much more sense. And this is what I've found as well, all the threads through life, all these things that show up. There comes a point where you understand that much deeper the meaning of all these things that have been happening, and it's all a journey, isn't it, really? So going back to the nighttime travels, I've had very unusual dreams. One of the things I've dreamt about a huge amount is aliens, UFOs landing, going off in spaceships, all that kind of stuff. I was never frightened though, apart from one dream where officials, I don't know who they were, because dreams often don't make a lot of sense, do they? But some officials were knocking at my front door, and that wasn't the best dream. But I've literally been dreaming about UFOs, and since I was quite young, really. I'd say about 12, something like that, 11 or 12. When I was really, really young, in our first house, I think I'd be about 5 or 6, I used to have an experience of somebody, a little man, for a better word, who used to come into my room at night, and we used to go flying over the local village. Make of that what you will. I don't know if anyone else has had dreams like that, but it was so very real. And there was a specific point by the curtains where he would appear, and then I never felt, it was so real and so vivid that I always felt that I had experienced that, and I could see the tops of the houses. And I always used to wonder, how can I know that if that wasn't real? You know, is this cross between, is that reality? Is this reality? What's going on here? And lots of very unusual things like that, really. What about you?
Well, a lot of my night travels I call night school, because I would go off to these sort of often floating cities
Wow.
uh, that were at different places. One of them was right above my lake in my town, and the other was the Shambhala experience. That was a very frequent place for me to travel to this mountainside city. But I would go to these places, and I would have I would find myself sometimes teaching lectures as as a teenager. But I wasn't in a teenage body so much anymore. Teaching lectures and sometimes learning lectures, both of them. And so I would wake up. I'd have my recall when I seemed to have them right before waking up, and I would remember one time I was in one of these places. I was giving some sort of talk on spiritualized multidimensional botany, and I knew that a lot of the people in the sort of the lecture hall were also humans who were having a night school type experience, and would be then somehow going down to their bodies, and that the purpose of this was that so that these things that were discussed here would slowly start to percolate up into people's waking consciousness, and eventually sort of move up and be part of how we do things here on Earth. And so I remember waking up from that one and just coming out too, and I'm 16, no interest in botany that I could say, and I just think with my nose like this, botany, and so that happened a lot with these different subjects. I view tesseracts, yeah, and kind of be like that. And I never took them. I didn't take it all that seriously. I mean, I did. I just kind of filed it under, well, that's cool, but how is this gonna, I don't have, it's great imagination, so I just kind of put everything in the imagination category, or more of the provisional reality category. But some of these, where I have a feeling of night school around you, and in addition to this, flying with seemingly friendly gray aliens, or whomever it happens to be, a little man.
Yeah, little man.
Not a little man.
I still don't know what that was all about, and I've not been able to figure it out, but certainly that was my experience, and it was so profound that I can remember it now. So there was something that was important about that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's very cool. But I didn't do a lot of flying like that. More the night schools.
Yeah,
And,
that's amazing, and so detailed. I didn't have that schooling experience as such. It was these kind of the flying, which happened a lot actually over the years, and also seeing events and knowing things about people before they kind of happened in in our day-to-day life, and being able to warn people on occasions as well about certain things.
That's good.
Yeah, it was really helpful, and I kind of I got used to it, so I was able to take myself seriously, and and act on it, rather than say, oh, that was just a dream, I'm not going to tell them what I've seen. So yeah, it's unusual, I guess.
I was given a wonderful confirmation by my really good friend at the time, who was one of the local psychics, I suppose is a good word. And I came to his house one day. I was about 16. Came into his little back door into the kitchen where we hung out, and the first thing he says was, I saw you at the city last night. And I was, I was after one of those dreams. I was like, oh yeah, like describe please, because I didn't want to give away anything.
Yeah.
And then he just wanted to describe everything that I talked about in that that dream space. So that was a really cool, in my life, that was a wonderful little confirmation.
That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, he was a fun guy. He used to find my retainers via telephone. That's what I used his friendship for. Because little clear plastic thing, they took out some of my baby teeth, and I had to wear it there. And I hated the damn thing because it just didn't feel great on my gums, and so I'd always lose it. But then you don't. I didn't want to tell my dad that I just lost this expensive piece of dental equipment. So in a panic, after rummaging through everything, I'd last resort call my friend Austin, and very Edgar Casey-like, since he'd never been inside my house. Nor had I ever described the layout to him. He would tell me, yeah, it's under the left side of the blue, L-shaped couch, under the leg in the newspaper.
Wow.
And I'd go look, and it wasn't there. And I'd say, like, oh, come on, Austin, it's not there. He said, no, look again. You searched very poorly. It's it's under that other end of and then there it was. So
wow.
this happened like 7 times where I had my own sort of Edgar Casey style, retainer finding thing.
That's quite amazing.
Yeah, so.
What else should we talk about?
No, who knows? The recording. I don't like to be on good behavior, so it's not really my thing.
I never make lists or anything either. It's always very much go with the flow and see what happens.
Yeah, the gold cities, I find, there's a term for, in Sanskrit or Hindu, lokas, or strata, or dimension of reality, or is that kalas, I should be saying. In any event, above the head, at least in my subjective experience, there seems to be, very discrete landscapes. The first thing was seeing these sort of like golden balls, which the closer I got to them, I realized they were sages, old sages, kind of in my spiritual lineage, but then I started to look sideways too, and there were just these whole most of them golden landscapes with different types of architecture. Now I don't know if the architecture is more of an objective thing or more of an interface with, that allows me to understand what's going on. So that when you ask, like, describe them specifically, I'm like, well, I can, but I'm not entirely sure, which whether it's objective or subjective, and it doesn't really matter. But I often see sort of, you mix together, domes and certain elements of neoclassical or Greco-Roman architecture with maybe some kind of Egyptian or Mayan sorts of bases. And, I could call it vaguely fantasy Atlantean.
It's what it sounds like, actually.
So I see a lot of that. Yeah. I also have seen cities that are completely geometric. Like they're not buildings in the way unless we had a world of Buckminster Fuller domes, but it's completely a geometric space. And there are sorts of spirals and triangles and things like that. And it almost changes as you move through it in a sort of holographic, multi-dimensional.
Sounds very beautiful. Yeah, there are so many dimensions existing around us, aren't there? Or really, they're probably within us, in actual fact, somehow. Probably in our DNA, we're probably just walking multi-dimensional, carrying the keys to access these different places, but it takes certain circumstances, maybe even meeting certain people, being in certain environments, meditation, all kinds of things, probably to open that perspective up. That's what I'm thinking, or what's coming to me as I'm talking about it. And I just think that we all have the ability to connect with these different dimensions, and some people are having a regular experience of it, and some people not so much. But I think we're going to need to integrate it more and more into our lives, because we are transforming, aren't we? All of us. We're all growing. We're all expanding. We're all reaching new levels of intelligence and awareness. through this whole process of awakening, that we're all remembering who we are and where we've come from and the ancient wisdom. And this is all a part of it, isn't it? It's remembering the beginnings of time. It's remembering the beginnings of Earth, remembering where we've come from, the stars, the universe. Part of my understanding is that we have lives in different star systems, and then somehow we end up here. And here is where it can be very, everything can be quite dense, and life is obviously can be full of suffering, and the energy here is denser. Everything's denser, and what we're used to is being these bodies of light that just travel through the galaxies and the stars. And I think that's what we, as eternal beings, I think that's what we spend our time doing, moving through and learning. And like you say, going to these magical cities in incredibly beautiful places. I had when my dad left his body a few years ago, since then I've had a few dreams about what's been happening with him. And in one of the dreams, he was living in our old house in Devon, and it was so strong, this dream. He was telling me that he was there and I could see him there, and yet I knew that there were other people living there. So he was living alongside them, but in a different dimension. And I was so tempted to go down, literally just go down there and speak to the people living in the house and saying, by the way, my dad's energy is here in this house. He's come back here. I didn't end up doing that, but I had such a strong sensation, a strong, I don't know really what to call it, but I could just see that he was there, that he was living his life again in that place because he loved it so much, and maybe having different experiences this time, but that something had brought him back to there. I also communicated with him a few times as well, and he told me he was in paradise and that everything was really beautiful where he was. And it does remind me of these cities that, that does sound like a utopian experience, a utopian place of living. And when I was really young, I was probably about, I don't know, 6 or something. It was before we went to America, so I can use that as an idea of timescale. I had this really strong feeling of wanting to be a part of a world where everybody got on, that was almost my purpose, was to be here and experience that. And I even knew the word utopia at a really young age. I mean, I had dyslexia and different things, but there was something about that word that I understood it at a very, very young age, and had this idea that I was going to be part of a world where everybody would get on, where there was more love, where there was no arguing, where there was more awareness, really. And I didn't know what that meant, but through my life I've seen that expand in different ways through my events, and just how people are shifting and changing. And I can see that it's becoming more of a possibility now, more, it's becoming real. Essentially it was our natural state, isn't it, to be in that utopian space of peace and joy and light. That's what the core of our being is, that. So I think, while we're here, we're embodying that, but we're also birthing it into this world. We've experienced it in other dimensions, in other star systems, but we've all come here specifically to birth it here in our own way. And it might not even affect all the population. That it might be that only some of us are open to even experiencing that and receiving it. But I think this is really the meaning of light workers, teachers, awakening, all these things, is so that we can birth that, the truth of who we are here in a physical way, and not just on a
that's the Pure Land, Pure Land Buddhism. The Bodhisattva pledge to stay until every blade of grass is enlightened, which is essentially until every corpuscle or every nook and cranny is sort of resonating with transcendent light. That, you know, on the practical level, you know, having come up in some New Age circles as a teenager, I noted a lot of flowery language, but not a lot of enough
Yeah.
practical understanding what we're required to do that. And so, yeah, if people want that, the first step is typically to you know, to get to know the source inside, and to clear their nervous system, have their nervous system be cleared of the tension of that, you know, of that kind of that egoic tension, and get to know progressively, typically more, that presence and peace that passes all understanding, and that, and that's why I was always told, hey, you know, enlightenment is the first baby step, which was that teenagers be like, oh my God, really, oh God, it's gonna take forever because I'm never gonna get that. I can't get the baby step, you know, and but now, you know, years later, I see, like, yeah, you know, that's this kind of tension that we're under is an abnormality, is a maladaption. It is not the. There's so much more that is awaiting for us, you know, just waiting, and we can't really receive until we're, you know, we relax those bonds, and yeah, then all this stuff becomes, I think, even more interesting, because there's this wonderful little quote from Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, or an interaction, I should say. Somebody, I think they were Texan, because they had a bit of an accent. They're 60s American, and they were kind of like, well, Maharishi, after you come into this unity of self, then, you know, what do you do after that? You know, and he said, is it, you know, after you become the ocean, then you can go out and explore other life in the sea, and you know, with a big smile, and yeah, so that's
lovely.
Yeah.
Well, that's it, isn't it? The deeper the recognition that we are the ocean, the you know, the expansion continues, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I was definitely one of those little young teenagers who was really excited about the paranormal and stuff, and I wanted to have really cool past life memories and all, you know, sorts of things. I was really keen to have those, and I never really did for the longest time. That was good, and I knew that was good, because I might have been terribly distracted by a lot of that sort of stuff, and I knew there was a kind of a classified stamp on certain things, and so it was only in the past 3 years that, just as a byproduct, a lot of that sort of stuff has sort of risen, and that's that multidimensionality. And the key to, from in my experience, to all of that, it's been kind of like staying so much more in the center, in the true center, you know, down at the depths. It's like going to the center of a wheel from a single spoke, and living down there, it's like all these other spokes started to open up, and kind of just be felt as normal as you know, this life that began in 1983 in Wisconsin, and so that's been really quite beautiful, that it's just that everything has been colored with this wonderful mundanity, that it has not at all been a process of going out and having to grab, you know, escape the body, or go anywhere else than the super mundane ground of awareness, and
and this is part of the balance, isn't it? As well as sifting through all the conditioning, emotions, and it's really, well, what I've come to understand is it's just about being open in any moment. You know, these moments that make up this continuous now, shall we say? And there's some of the time we have, you know, we feel great, or we might not feel so great, or whatever it is that's happening. If we can just keep being open and open and open, and just aware of what's happening and recognizing that it's not, you know, it's not going to harm us, these feelings, these emotions, whatever it is that comes up. Because I think so many people are, you know, they think they feel something, it doesn't feel good, so they avoid it, don't they? And they reach for, I mean, this is really the path of addiction. They reach for alcohol or drugs or social media or whatever it might be, and as a way to avoid these feelings that arise, but not recognizing that they're the space, or rather not knowing or remembering that they're the space where these things are arising and not the actual thing itself that they're experiencing. It's not sure how I got into this really, but it's just kind of coming up for whatever reason. Yeah, so that's something that I've just become more and more aware of, shall we say, is particularly over the last few years, just to keep being that space and opening up to life as it's happening in the moment, and not pushing anything away, just staying as aware of it, really. And I think this is the growth. This is what makes us strong in a world where there's so much going on, and you could say, you know, there's so much suffering, there's so many things that, you know, we aren't okay, really. And so to just be with all this massive swirl of energy that's going on all the time, this collective energy, which is, I feel, what we're picking up on when we have those sensations and we're not feeling that great. It's as if we've tapped into something collectively that's happening, you know, where people are experiencing fear or they're experiencing pain or whatever it is. And for that moment, we are connected with them and their individual experience, because of course we're all connected anyway. But some of us feel that more deeply, don't we? I think.
No, that's true.
Empathic,
you know,
isn't it?
Empaths. It's, here I have to come in with my Saturnian flavor, because and remind empaths that you got your own shit too. You know?
Yeah, of course.
And it's okay. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's coming from this nervous system or you know, 100 million nervous systems that are resonant with whatever little line of tension. It's all okay. You know, this spiritual growth has a wonderfully unglamorous aspect to it of just having to have a commitment to being present no matter what, to doing meditation practice or whatever it is that your vehicle for establishing that connection, and just kind of, you know, just kind of sitting through and having some real shitty days, and just accepting that some days you're just going to want to flip off the convection oven, or from my life, cook. But just some days you're just gonna be a little bit pissed off, and that's all right. You know, that's how it is on Earth. It's like shoveling mud sometimes, and no problem.
Yeah, it's the mud that grows the lotus.
Exactly. That's exactly, yeah.
The mud that grows the lotus. Yeah, we need that mud, that stickiness, that challenge, that difficulty, that suffering to grow and to recognize and to continue this process of growth and opening up.
Whether it's an intelligence or not, a lot of the times I think, you know, people just we get to be pushed into those spots where we're not accepting. You know, we get to be made aware of some sort of tacit or not so tacit fear that we have. Often, you know, I mean, a big one is for everybody in this world is money and survival, and money typically boils down to straight up survival. And death, and or maybe the pain that's on the way to death. You know, the sort of the indignity of having callous people kick us when we're in the gutter just about to die. For many of us might be worse, but all of those early you know, this kind of limbic system base level survival stuff, and so I found that a lot of my hard times, because money has not necessarily always grown on trees, you a lot of it has been about, okay, can I accept death? Can I be cool with that? Can I be cool with being, being a sort of a marginalized nobody? Which might have been harder with the kind of cultural and societal conditioning I grew up with. Within my family, there's all this sort of need to be a somebody, and to have, try to get into the history books or something like that, all that kind of BS. And so I was forced into really facing a lot of that stuff, and what a liberation when that stuff was pretty much more or less taken off, and I could just accept, and that makes everything just so much lighter and so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah, money has I've had and continue to have an interesting journey with money. It's when we have money difficulties with money, it seems that because that is a basic survival thing, then it's very difficult to, in those moments, be this open presence, because your energy is going to the I need to survive, how am I going to figure this out, panic, really.
Right.
And at the same time, the irony of those situations is you need that space of presence, you need to remember that space within you and connect with that so that you can find the solution. But the mind is going, I need to survive, this is terrible, a disaster, or whatever the story is. And so the energy is getting pulled away just at that time. And I think this is a real learning for me, and it must be for many other people, is to, even when things are really difficult and struggling and the mind energy wants to go to that, is to stay in this awareness, stay in this presence, and remember that that's where all the answers are going to come from to solve that thing. Essentially that's what always happens. And also what I find, what I've also been learning, is that essentially we have to let go, because even when we're worrying all the time, even when something looks a certain way and we're worrying about it, particularly with finances, if it's a major situation, then to actually stop the worry and to just go, okay, this is the situation, I need to relax into this because right now I can't do anything. And then somehow just that acceptance, I think you just said this, really, that acceptance of the situation, then something seems to shift. And it might be in a small way, and then it might be in a big way. But whilst we're fighting and the energy is going over there and there's this unrest and panic, it's quite the opposite that's needed in order for that change. It's always, isn't it, when we totally accept our situation, whatever that might be, that the shift then is able to happen and the expansion happens, and then the next page in the journey opens up, really. That then we get to experience the next level of that learning, that understanding, and what that's expanded into through that learning. Certainly been a big journey for me. This one continues. I don't have it all sorted. I'm not going to say that I do.
Yeah, pretty much everything boils down to some kind of dynamic, conscious relaxation.
Yeah.
A purposeful relaxation. Either we can open or we can tighten and constrict, and even though tighten and constrict seems to parts of our psyche and our body like the way to go, even and especially in the difficult situations, fetal position is disadvantageous to kind of staying open and staying open to the seeming tidal wave of life, and then we're allowed to surf on it instead of getting crushed at the the bottom of the
Yeah.
metaphorical river. Yeah.
And this is really learning to go with the flow, isn't it? It's that
Yeah.
that saying, you know, go with the flow. And if we're constantly fighting whatever's showing up, or worrying about it, or trying to change it, but not being aware of, you know, the space that we are, not being aware of our presence, of the ultimate intelligence, really, because that's what it is, isn't it? In that space of meditation, in that space of deep relaxation and openness, that's when all the possibilities are available to us. But while we're pushing and fighting or arguing or whatever, it's and contracting, it's closing that down, it's closing that off, it's closing to those possibilities, actually.
And you know, like when I was younger, I'd ask for like people to tell me some similar things, and I didn't have a very good practical means of achieving that. So, you know, easier said than done is definitely, this
Yeah.
falls into that category. So I was glad that I found, you know, more systematic ways of just getting to that point. Because even as a beginning meditator, if you know, if I got caught by something, or I'm going into sort of a one of my knots catches me, you know, I was have to be pretty easy on myself, because it's like, yeah, this ain't gonna get shifted right away. This is gonna be, if I can cut this down from like a 3-day thing to a 6-hour thing, that was a victory in the beginning, you know. So, and so it's just the time that things could shift, would go down until they just didn't bother me at all anymore. Yeah. But I say that partially because, you know, if we do happen to release this to the general public, I always like to, although I like to push people to be zealous and to open to that, you know, I also at the same time like people to be a little bit easy on themselves and understand
I
Rome
agree.
wasn't built today.
No,
Yeah.
and it's a process, isn't it? It is a process that happens. There's expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction, and you know, and it's about having continuous awareness of that. I mean, really, that's the main practice, isn't it? To just be aware of this expansion and contraction, and remember to be in the expansion.
Yeah, until we remember to be at the sort of the state of consciousness that is driving the expansion, or the whole process, which is, you know, the unbound. You know, eventually we might have very intermittent, fleeting, not so clear experiences of going into this silence, or at the beginning, often people, you know, tend to report a void. As they get used to it a little bit longer, then the emptiness turns into kind of a fullness, but it's the same thing. And so the more people are able to touch that, then, you know, that's the bullseye at the center of the dartboard.
I like to say empty fullness.
Yeah.
Because it's perfect. It just explains. Yeah. It's funny to say, you know, it's all about emptiness, but actually that in the emptiness is the fullness, because it's full of possibilities, isn't it? It's full of all of life.
Yeah, I was always, at least my particular nervous system seems to be one that has, from very early beginnings, instead of a nothing, it tends to be described more like an everything, or experienced more like an everything. Spiritual process feels more like just being blown up and expanded and turned into the everything everywhere, and that's how it's been over here.
Yeah, I've had moments of watching birds in the sky and feeling myself moving and darting, and, you know, just seeing that there's no, that bird is this as well, and that there's no separation, and so profound these things, so simple, so easy, but so deeply profound. And there's so much gratitude that arises from those experiences, those rememberings. I always find
those are some of the lovely, I think hallmarks, road signs that come along the way. That the sense of the very basic sense of having the world happen within you, and
absolutely.
it's just this big, profound space, and that's always has been arresting, especially with birds. Actually, hearing birds.
It's the freedom that they represent is somehow just, the movement is recognized in that freedom, that their freedom is this freedom. It's all the same freedom.
So what happened in your life to sort of kind of bring this all about, or to kind of culture this awareness?
So that's a great question. Well, the first memory that I have really was when I was at school and I was about 6 and I was being bullied, and I was known as Amy in those days. Some people still call me that now, actually. And somebody had written Amy is a pig on the wall at school. I was horrified. I was so upset. I was so angry. How dare anybody call me that? What a horrible thing to say. And I took myself away from the playground where everybody else was and went around the back of the school, because I was just really sad. I just wanted to be on my own, be in my own space, just away from everybody. And I was really quite angry as well. I was angry, I was upset. I didn't know who'd written it either. And when I went round to the back of the school, I just found myself completely on my own, completely in my own space, on my own. And there were these huge trees, or what appeared to be huge trees then, because I was so tiny. And the wind was moving around me, was moving around my body, and there was something really calming about it. And as a child, we have this innocence, we have this awareness to play, don't we? It's just so natural, and through awakening we reconnect with that innocence, that play. And what happened was, as the wind was moving around me, I started to play with it. So I said, wind blow, and it blew, and it stopped, and it stopped. And I was having this interaction with the wind, and it felt so incredibly magical. And I recognized that it wasn't separate from me, that it was playing with me, it was aware of me. And so I was interacting with everything around me. And I looked up at the trees, and I felt like, oh, do you know this too? In the sky, are you part of this? Like, is this all? And I felt like this little witch who'd discovered her magic in a way, because I was just so innocent, and that's how I experienced it, as magic. It just seemed like magic to me to be able to interact with the wind and have it play with me. It was so beautiful. And through that experience, I was just totally calm. I just felt totally held. I didn't feel sad or angry anymore. I just felt complete love and blessed for the gift that I'd been given, which was to be in that moment, in that space with the wind and the trees and the sky and everything. And it was just so beautiful. And it wasn't long after that, but I think I was 6 when that happened, and I was 7 or nearly 7. And we moved to Oregon in America. We went to live in Rajneeshpuram, Osho's commune in America. If anybody's seen Wild Wild Country documentary, basically that's where I was as a 7-year-old. So this experience of freedom that I'd had essentially was given 3 months for me to really deepen into it. And I wasn't around my parents were there, but they were working and I didn't really see them. So I was very much doing my own thing. I was very much on my own. Both my younger sisters, they were working together at the farm. I couldn't work at the farm because I had all these allergies, because I'd always been this really sensitive child. And so I was supposed to be working in a boutique, helping with the clothes, but I really didn't go. I used to go and sit by the river. I used to go and walk and sit by the river and wander around and go up to the great hall, which looked like something out of a sci-fi movie, which is where we all sat and meditated. This huge hall in the middle of the Oregon desert. I mean, it was incredible. And it was still sort of, some of the structure was still being built, if I remember correctly, when I was 7. I think it was 1982 when I was there. And it was just this time of connecting with the land. You know, we could hear the coyotes sometimes. I remember seeing a snake. Nothing scared me though. I wasn't scared. And I spoke to a lot of the adults there, but as if I didn't feel like a child. I just felt like this ancient being in a very small body. I was able to interact with everybody and communicate with people, and I was listened to and heard. And every morning we used to do the gachamis. I don't know if you've heard of it. Well, this is how I know it anyway. It was like a meditation. We would do a meditation, but we would sing these mantras, which were called the gachamis, and it's Buddham Saranam Gacchami, Sangam Saranam Gacchami, Dhammam Saranam Gacchami, and it means I go to the Buddha, I go to the Sangha, I go to the one, the teacher.
Oh, Gachami, yes, the Sanskrit verb for I go. Right.
So we said those every morning, and even then, I was just. I mean, I have to sort of giggle at myself as a kid, because everyone would have their eyes shut and everybody would be, meditating, very strict and regimented. And I'd be there, I'd be doing it, but I'd be looking around what everybody's doing. Why are they all doing this? What's going on? And it was just such a beautiful time of freedom for me, to be honest. As a 7-year-old, I don't think many 7-year-olds get that amount of freedom. And there would be some people that would think that was a really bad idea, and I guess it could be. In certain circumstances, it could be a really bad idea. But for me, it was just what I needed, and it helped me to encompass what had already began within me, this process that had begun. So.
Yeah, well, I'm in Portland, Oregon, so I'm just.
Oh wow! I didn't even realize that.
And so here and there, I've made friends or acquaintances or met. Some old sannyasins. So that this is still very much a part of the fabric of Oregon life is the Osho experience.
I was in the Portland hotel when it was bombed. The night it was bombed, I was in the hotel as a 7-year-old with my sisters and my parents. Yeah, we ended up on the street in the middle of the night, and then so many people from the town or the city, the area, were taking people in to help them because we couldn't go back into the hotel. So we ended up spending the night at a lady's house. She let us all in. There was 5 of us. She was like, come and stay at my house, which was lovely. But that was a strong experience as well, to have to leave in the middle of the night, not knowing what was going on, and then be told that a bomb had,
When did you get back to Britain?
Well, I remember when I was back in Britain, I don't know the months or anything. It's a bit of a blur really, because obviously I was so young, but I think I was 8 not long after I came back, and I went back into the school system. My parents split. You know, the whole experience just split my parents up. We had a serious situation with my middle sister while we were in Oregon. She fell with a glass bottle and ended up having to have surgery in the ranch, in the hospital there. She'd cut the main artery, and yeah, pretty profound stuff, really. But it went. I mean, the surgeon, everybody was incredibly gifted, and it went perfectly, and she made a full recovery. But it was a shock for us as a family. We were the only English family there that, you know, that were together with both parents and all the kids, kind of thing. And so that was another reason that we came back. My mum had actually wanted to leave before that happened, and then when that happened, we had to stay a bit longer. So when we came back, the family kind of split. It wasn't long before my dad left, and we all went back into the system and tried to make new friends at school, and everything sort of went kind of back to normal in a funny kind of way.
So later life, have you done like a meditation practice, for instance? Has that been
yeah, well, I learned to meditate on the ranch.
Yeah, sure. So you kept that up.
Yeah, I did, in my own way. Yeah, I always found space to just sit and be quiet. And I didn't really refer to it as meditation because I didn't even know that it was really, that's what it was.
Sure.
But it became a part of my life from a young age. And interestingly enough, it's also what my name means. So the name that Osho gave me means, you know, focused attention, which is meditation. So it became a really strong part of my life. As when we were, when I was 15, nearly 16, we moved down to Devon to live with our dad, me and my two sisters. Prior to that, we'd lived in France for 2 years and Spain for 6 months. So we'd had a greater experience of meeting more people, at an international school. So we were really having our hearts and minds open to life, and you know, and when we moved to Devon, my dad lived just down the road from Koswan School, which was the Osho Koswan School that was based in the UK at that time. There was another place as well, Medina, but I think that closed. And so Osho Koswan was the next place, and he lived just down the road, and his girlfriend at the time was her teacher at the school. And so was our friend Miten. I don't know if you've heard of Deva Miten, Deva Pramal Miten.
Yes.
Yeah, well, my dad was their manager for sort of 15 years. Miten was one of my dad's good friends. So yeah, prior to that, we'd spent some time going down there and having holidays there, and then we went to live there. And it was a shock to the system. And my dad had got photos of Osho around the house everywhere. And my sisters were wondering how that was going to go down with the locals. You know, when we started school, how are we going to bring people back here when we got these photos? So I used to say, I would just tell them it's, you know, granddad or something. Don't need to, because they felt concerned that, you know, there's this kind of thing that people wouldn't accept us. And there's a great irony with that, which was that everybody more than accepted us, and a lot of our friends actually took sannyas, and a lot of them went to India and went to the ashram, and we sort of were this catalyst in that tiny little village in Devon for some massive changes. When I think about it, really, some huge changes, and so that was when Osho kind of really came back, you know, because we were around sannyasins again, and but there was a kind of a mixture of what we'd been used to and some of our old life in America sort of fusing together to create this new experience and to connect with the people in the village and surrounding area that didn't know anything about it, but through us felt the connection and, you know, got involved essentially. So that was really interesting how that all transpired. And then some of them went to India. They went traveling around India and Nepal and doing things that, you know, they'd never thought about doing before, but they just were inspired to do that. We used to have events at the school down the road as well, the Ashoka Swan School. And it was a time of growing up quite quickly, actually, because my mum wasn't around. She was living up in Staffordshire, and my dad was working in London for a book publishing company at the time that was heavily publishing lots of spiritual type books. Labyrinth Publishing, it was called. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was pioneering at the time. And so my dad's time was taken up being there in London all week, and he would come back at weekends. So we were really looking after ourselves a lot of the time.
Wow, that's
yeah. Doing our own washing and cleaning jobs and learning to cook. And we would have housekeepers for, you know, a certain time, and then they'd go, and often they were international, and sometimes there were people that had come back from India that had been in the ashram for a while, needed to come back to the UK but couldn't get back into life straight away, so they ended up at our house looking after
I see. Halfway house.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Monkish halfway house. Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
It was lovely, and so our house was always a place where people would gather together, and there was always times when the table was full of people, and not necessarily people we even knew, just people who'd come in from somewhere. Maybe my dad wouldn't have known them years ago, and they were just found themselves in the village. They come back from London or whatever the story was. So we had some fun times. You know, we had a lot of fun in that house. It was a great community space. It just kind of set itself up that way somehow. Over time it became more and more of a community space, and we got used to people coming and looking after us for a while and then going, and obviously we grew up, so we didn't need that so much as we got a bit older anyway. But it was a time, yeah, it was a real time of growing up and recognizing that we needed to be independent to some extent. From 15, 16, they were younger than me. I was 15, nearly 16, and they were 15 and 12, 13 actually. So it was quite challenging at times. We went through some emotional upheaval because my mum had essentially, there's no really a better way to say it, but she kicked us out. She made a decision that it was time we went to live with our dad, and we hadn't done anything in particular. It was just what needed to happen at that time, and I fully accepted that now. And what it did give us was it gave us time with our dad that we would never have had otherwise, because he then travelled to Germany and just was constantly travelling when he was managing Deva Mitten and Manos. So in that time, yeah, that's kind of how it was really. And there were some challenges emotionally at first when we found ourselves in Devon and our mum wasn't around anymore, certainly. And some of us found it more difficult than others, and of course it was traumatic in some ways. But it was necessary because we needed that time with our dad, because he left his body quite early. He left his body when he was 64. So, you know, and this is where you see what I was saying earlier about how everything fits in together. Certain things happen and we don't know why it's happening. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and even the people who are involved don't really know why they're doing what they're doing. But then the understanding becomes clear as time moves on, and you see the fuller picture, the bigger picture of it all. So, and after that, really, I ended up living in lots of different places in the UK and having lots of different experiences. And I lived at the Relaxation Centre, which was a sannyas run community space in Bristol, for 12 months, which was a good experience, mostly. And then I went to uni in Derby and then moved to Nottingham, and life just, different things happened, life expanded. And then I met my ex and had my son. And that was profound, then I became a mother, and that was a whole other experience then. That was the day that I became a mum, and that changed everything. I kind of slowed down a little bit to put some roots down. For the first time in my life, I actually settled in one place for more than 4 years. It turned out to be 14 in the end, in the same house, which was just an incredible amount of time. I've never lived anywhere that long ever.
How old is your son?
He's 18 now.
18.
Yeah, and he's a professional footballer.
I recall this, yes.
Yeah. So we've had a really interesting journey. He's had a really interesting journey with that too. That's, run alongside all the things that have been happening with me. I could write a book about his life already, and he's only 18. It's quite amazing. All the things that have happened that have led to where he is now. All the synchronicities, all the people that have showed up, all the events, everything. It's just really amazing. He finished his scholarship not long ago, but before he'd finished it, they offered him a 2-year contract. So he decided to take it, and he's doing really well. He's in Scotland actually at the moment. He's in Scotland training.
How exciting!
Yeah, very, very exciting. I'm so happy that he's doing what he loves. I think it's so important to be able to do what we love in life,
Yeah, if you get a chance, take it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many people doing things, jobs particularly, that they don't enjoy, that they just feel they have to. And I do understand that as well. I understand it really well, but it's a shame to miss out on what we really want to create, what we really want to do with our lives, if we feel so pushed into fear that we choose something we don't even enjoy. That brings us stress, and then that's a whole other story, isn't it? I don't know why my screen keeps going dark. It's very strange. I've done I've had a few interviews, and they've not been able to see me for whatever reason.
I see you just fine.
Yeah, the camera always seems to just not work, or it will on the recording, but then when you play it back, all of a sudden I'm not there. Something's happened. So they've had to just put one of my photographs on the on the screen, because with my voice in the background, because they couldn't film me. Quite funny, really. It's a bit cold now, that coffee.
Well, that's an adventurous life, and I probably have to get going soon to do some of the stuff I promised to do today.
Great.
For my sister and brother-in-law. But wow, it's a interesting way to grow up. definitely unique.
Yeah, I would
From the
say.
UK to Eastern Oregon, that's it's quite a contrast.
Yeah, I mean, we were only there for 3 months, but it was the largest 3 months. You know, it was the
Yeah.
expanse of a lifetime. The experience was so huge to be in a place with so many people all wearing orange and reds with malas, and actually things got a bit more relaxed then. I think there was some pinks.
There you go.
um,
In the sci-fi accommodation set, Osho's costumes with the big shoulder pads always struck me as like he got them from the costume director of Star Trek II, and basically got like the Vulcan ambassadors' clothing. It's kind of interesting sartorial choices.
yeah, he certainly had some amazing designs, clothes wise. They've never been repeated. They're just quite incredible. When you look back at some of the old videos that you can find them on YouTube. I just think, who designed that? You know, it's just amazing. They're timeless somehow.
Like I said, whoever was making costumes for the character who played Leonard Nimoy's father in Star Trek. It's
Funny. Right, okay, so maybe we have to end there.
yeah, we probably should. I have to go do my things during the day here.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with this now.
Oh, I'll tell you what happens. Once we close out, then you'll have a little bit of you will have on your end appear a dialog box that says preparing recording file.
Okay.
That shows it. And then after, like sometimes it's 20 or 30 minutes after it does that, you'll have another dialog box that comes up that has the recording files in it.
Okay, I'll stop recording now then.